State Library's Professional Development Office. I will be the host and question moderator for today's webinar, Organize Your Work Life and Set Yourself Free, presented by Lynn Hobbs, Director of the Pendleton Community Public Library. Just want to make a little announcement just in case. We've had some bad weather here in Indiana today. So I know part of the area has been in a tornado with a watch or warning. Anyway, if for some reason this webinar goes out, that will be the reason why. So if that does happen, we will reschedule and put it back on our web page. So knock on wood, we're hoping that doesn't happen. So a few housekeeping items before we start. If you are having sound issues during the webinar, please see the sound issues box just below the chat box. If there is a global sound issue, we will announce it in the chat box. If you are unable to resolve the sound issue you are experiencing, we are recording the webinar and you can watch it offline after it has ended. And also, if you do happen to be signed on more than once, you might be experiencing some sound issues. So just make sure that you're not signed on twice. If you have a question, just type it in the chat box on the upper left side of the screen, and I'll be watching it, and we'll get your question to Lynn as soon as there's a good opportunity. There also should be near the end a time for questions. And today's session is worth 1 LEU, and your certificate will be available for download at the end of the webinar. If you are watching an archive recording of this presentation, information on how to obtain your LEU is in the video's description on YouTube. Also, today's webinar will be recorded and archived. So after the webinar, it will be transcribed and will be available on the Indiana State Library's archive webinars page. For weekly updates on upcoming trainings and to learn more about what's happening in libraries across the state, please subscribe to the Indiana State Library's e-newsletter, The Wednesday Word. And also check out our continuing education website for other professional development opportunities. Okay, let's get started. So I am now happy to turn the presentation over to Lynn.
Hello, I'm Lynn Hobbs. I'm the director of the Pendleton Community Public Library, and I'm so excited to be here. I'm really glad to see so many people signed up who want to organize your work life and set yourself free. I am a firm believer that even in making some small changes, you can alleviate a lot of your stress and just help you work cleaner and smoother and more efficiently. So let's get started. Okay, first thing I want to talk about is kind of my story and why this is such a passion of mine. We moved into a house that was new for us about 5 years ago, and you can guess from looking at the picture what happened within the first year that we were living there. We had a flood in the basement. That's nice, clean water dripping off that box. Unfortunately, that was not our situation. Our flood was raw sewage. So as most of us who have basements we have things in our basements in boxes and containers, and sometimes they're sentimental items or household items that we're not even sure we need, so we store them away. I didn't even want to go through those boxes. I had a vague idea of what was in most of them, but I didn't want to see my things covered in sewage. So I just threw them away. I didn't even open them up, and that has really sort of reformed my thinking of what to keep and what to throw away and what I need and what I don't need. So that's kind of how I got started being so passionate about getting sort of cleaned up. That, of course, is a personal story for my personal home. We're talking about an office today, and that's just a little bit different. And we're going to talk about why that's different. So first, I want to touch on the KonMari method as what I would call the elephant in the room, although the cutest little elephant you've ever seen. Some of you are probably familiar with the life-changing magic of tidying up, a book that's really very popular right now, as well as her Netflix series, Tidying Up with Marie Kondo. So she is kind of the organizational guru right now. She goes into people's homes and helps them go through their clothes and their kitchens and their personal effects and really figure out what to keep and what to throw away and how to get organized. And she has some really interesting methods. One of them that I like a lot that we'll talk about is that everything should have a home. But she also has some things that are a little less traditional, like she greets her home, she thanks her clothing. And one thing that she does is she asks herself when going through personal effects and clothing is, does this item spark joy? And if it sparks joy, you keep it, or at least you consider keeping it. And if it doesn't, you get rid of it. But again, we're talking about our office here. So does this spark joy? Probably not. And so we need to figure out what kind of approach can we take when we're going to go in and clean our offices, because it is a different philosophy. It's less of an emotional tie to the things in your office than in your home. So I want to talk about getting started and getting inspired, and kind of like anything else that you do when you're getting ready to go on a diet, or you're going to go on vacation, or you're going to redesign a room in your home. You look at pictures and you look at what that vision is for you in your mind, what you want it to look like and how you want it to feel. So just take a look at catalogs and Google some images of clean office spaces, sunny office spaces with plants, or kind of whatever you would like to see in your personal office space. I mean, here I've even included a photograph on the left of a cubicle and how you can cover your walls in your cubicle to make it a little bit more homey. I like the really clean look of the clean desk without much on it. So it really helps to visualize what you want your finished product to look like. That gives you a goal, just like anything else that you would plan. I don't know about all of you, but you're all librarians, so I would think that you're a rather organizational sort. I love to look at organizational supplies, so I kind of have to geek out on organizational supplies. The Container Store, if you don't have a Container Store near you, and I'm not promoting the Container Store, but they are clearly designed and they exist for the purpose of getting us organized, and so that can be a fun stop to make to get inspired, as well as their catalog. I love every page in that catalog. It's pretty awesome. Looking at weekly planners, looking at file systems and folders, and just things that you think you might be able to use in your finished product. I would not recommend buying anything at that point in time, because you need to get organized before you can start buying things, but you can pick up a few file folders or something that's kind of fun to get you motivated and get you started with this process. So getting started, we already talked a little bit about inspiring yourself and keeping your eye on the prize. And again, just like when you're on a diet and you want to lose 10 pounds, you have to keep your eye on those 10 pounds and stick to it, and just remember what the end result is going to be. You're going to feel better, you're going to be more organized, your work is going to go through so much smoother. So keep your eye on the prize. It's going to keep you motivated. And you have to commit. This is not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen by itself, and it's not going to happen piecemeal. I have tried to organize my office thinking, I'm going to go through files A through D this week, and then I'm going to do the next 4 letters the next week, and that just doesn't work. It's hard to maintain that commitment over a period of time, and when you're done, it's time to start over again. So you really need to commit a day, a weekend, do it in one fell swoop, and just get it taken care of. So find a Saturday evening. I know nobody wants to organize their office on a Saturday evening, but you won't be interrupted. Bring your favorite music. Bring a friend if your friend would be helpful, and just get it done and commit to it. But there are some things before you get to your office and start actually working on it that you can do to prepare ahead of time. For example, make sure you have a big trash can. If you're going to be throwing away lots and lots of file folders, you don't want to get stymied with the fact that you don't have a big enough trash can to throw them away. If you're going to be reorganizing files and folders and you need actual files and folders to put those things in, make sure that you have them handy. Make sure you have labels and binders and the clear sheet inserts. I'm talking obviously about physical materials right now, to make sure that you have everything you need to get organized and that you don't get stuck. Because if you get stuck, you're going to lose your inspiration and you're going to be just dead in the water. So try to make sure that doesn't happen by preparing ahead of time. And not only preparing your office area and the things that you need ahead of time, but keeping a running list of what you know you need. So this is something you do mentally before you get started. Maybe you start thinking about organization a week, 3 weeks, even a month before you hit your office and find out what you're going to keep and what you're going to throw away. So keep a running list of what you know you need. When you're in your car or when you're in the shower in the morning, think, okay, what are my current projects? What files and folders am I constantly referencing? What things am I referencing, every couple weeks, so that you have those things at the ready. And then when you come across other files that you're looking at, you think, oh boy, I didn't think about that when I've been going over this mentally over the past few weeks. Chances are you don't need to have it right there at the ready. And always think about what works for you. Our organizational methods are very different and they're very individual. Librarianship 101 kind of, or cataloging 101 is you organize for retrieval. And you think about where would you go to retrieve that particular item. Say, for example, you buy a new refrigerator and you file the receipt for the refrigerator. You bought it at Lowe's. You might file it under R for refrigerator, W for Whirlpool, or L for Lowe's, or even F for fridge. So think about yourself and how your mind works and where you would go to find that information. Think about what works for you. And this is something we just kind of touched on here, thinking about files and folders specifically. Ask, and it seems like such a fine line between these two ways of thinking about it, but ask, where would I look for this? Not where should I put this? When you think, where should I put this? It's very easy just to kind of stash it away somewhere out of sight, out of mind, not in a mindful location where it's reasonably located for you to find later on. So as you're going through things, ask, where would I look for this? Now, for my files and folders, I think of things in three categories. I think of what's in use, what's used frequently, and what's used rarely. So in use for me are things that are on my desktop. They're either literally hard copies of something sitting on my desk, or they are on the desktop of my computer. I work off of two computers because I'm going to show you one of my desktops later on and you're going to be like, you work off that? So in use has to be really super handy. Used frequently should still be in your office. It should still be easily available, or maybe in a business office if the business office is close by. Something you're looking at maybe once a month, but you do need to have access to it. Versus something that is used very rarely, maybe once a year, if that, or something you haven't opened in forever, and where will you put those items? For things that are used rarely, I would recommend just getting them out of your landscape, not even out of your office. Get them, if you have any kind of a storage area, if you have a garage, if you have a mezzanine or a basement or anything like that. Obviously, if they're files and folders, you need to keep them maintained in such a way that they're not going to be affected by moisture or anything like that. But for those of us, and all of us, we have to maintain a lot of paper files of things, some for as long as 75 years, personnel files, and they should not be in your office, and they shouldn't even be in your business office. Get them in banker's boxes, get them protected so that they don't get ruined wherever you're going to store them, and then date the outside of the box so you know at what time it's okay for you to throw that away. And that way you don't even have to think about it. You go into that storage area once a year and you pull boxes that you can throw away and you just get rid of them, and you're not going through that same stuff over and over and over. Just get it out of your landscape. When you start cleaning your office, I would recommend starting with low-hanging fruit. So when you open up your file folders or your cabinet or whatever you're going to start with, chances are something's going to jump out at you as that's been there forever and I never use that. And it can be hard to throw things away. I understand this. So that very first thing to throw away is kind of a, it's a good first step. But if you see a binder there and you haven't opened it up in 4 years and you're not even really sure you need it anymore, get the paper out of there and hang on to that binder. And that first start, that first step is a really good way to just stay motivated. So start with low-hanging fruit and then keep low-hanging fruit. If you've got another office area, you can go and grab something else out of there and throw something away that's kind of a big item. That's a really good motivating factor. And kind of another way to think about some of the things that you're looking at as you go through them is don't think about what you're throwing away. It's again, just a different mindset. It's hard to throw things away. We all get book donations at the library, right? And we get book donations that we're like, why are people donating this to the library? Nobody wants this. It's because people cannot bear the thought of throwing books away. Surely there's a child somewhere who could use this book, or a women's shelter that could use this book, and so they donate it and they try to get rid of it because they can't bear to throw it away. And then what do? Sometimes we take it straight to the trash and throw it away. So try not to be so emotionally connected with things just because you're throwing them away, and instead select what to keep. I like to ask myself, what's the worst that can happen? We had what I called at the library the sea of keys. It was, oh my gosh, 150 keys probably in a shoebox, and then there were some keys in a makeup case, and then there were some keys in a manila envelope, and some were labeled and some weren't, and some were rusty and some were from the old building. We had no idea what half of these keys were for, but every time we needed to find some odd key, you know, for an electrical box outside or a lift station or something, we would go through the sea of keys and see if we could find them. Really hard to throw that stuff away, because you figure as soon as I throw that key away, I'm going to need it the very next day. Well, what's the worst thing that can possibly happen? I have to call a locksmith. Big deal. I'd rather get rid of the sea of keys. So kind of similar to dating the boxes and stuff that you have for your retention schedule, I sealed up the entire sea of keys, and I put a date on it, and I said, if this box has not been opened by January 1st, 2019, throw it away. And on January 2nd, 2019, I threw those keys away. And I know it's only March, but I haven't needed any of those keys yet. But I sat on them for about a year and a half before I was absolutely comfortable throwing them away, because we just weren't needing them. So seal things up, date it. And this is kind of a method that can work for home and stuff too. If, say, you have a utility drawer at home, or the drawer in your kitchen where you have your whisks and your spatulas, put those all in a separate box and keep that drawer empty. And then when you need something, go to the box, and when you use it, put it in the drawer. And after maybe 2 months, whatever's left in the box, you probably don't need. Or you can put somewhere else, you know, again, kind of outside your landscape, because after a while that drawer can get kind of hard to open, because the meat tenderizer is in the way, and you haven't tenderized meat in like 3 years, so there's no sense in having it, taking up premium space in your kitchen drawer. I like to use monthly folders to help stay on track. In fact, Paula and I were just talking before the webinar started about all the monthly tasks that we have to do that are absolutely critical. You don't want to miss those deadlines. We all just finished our reporting in January and February, and to use those monthly folders. Now, these can be virtual folders, they can be, electronic folders, or they can be physical folders. So for example, I have actually physical folders in my desk for January through December for my board meetings, because I know that in every August, I'm adopting my salary schedule. And I know that in every January, we have our readopting the Internet Acceptable Use Policy. And all those things that we have to do every January and every February, I just have those papers there in those folders, so I know when I pull that month's folder and I start getting ready for the board meeting, I see my reminders and I say, aha, that stays on my radar. So that really helps to keep me on track. And then this isn't really a file and folder issue, but I do want to talk about landscape items. This is something I talk about a lot. I think maybe I've made up that name, I don't know. I call it a landscape item. It is something that sits around your facility and has been sitting around your facility for so long that you don't even see it anymore. And so, I used to work at the Indianapolis Public Library years ago, and I was on their safety team. And I learned that if somebody calls in a bomb threat and the police come in, they expect a staff member to walk through the facility with them, because the staff member knows if that box is suspicious or if that bag is always sitting there. So those landscape items are things that you're not even noticing, but they are helpful, because you're like, well, yeah, that box is always sitting there. So try to minimize your landscape items, not just for neatness, but also for sweeping the building for a bomb scare, which we hope, of course, never happens to you. But avoid those landscape items. And in fact, after today's webinar, I would recommend that you start with that. That is some low-hanging fruit. Walk through your facility and find something that has been sitting somewhere forever that you don't need or should be in a different spot, and take care of it. And you know what? The next time you walk past that space, you haven't noticed all these months that that thing's been sitting there, but you're going to notice that it's not sitting there. And when you see that space freed up, it's really, really a good motivating factor. So I think that's a good way to get started. Really just right away, find one big landscape item and get rid of it, whether it's an old monitor sitting in the server room or in your office, or a box that you're keeping because it's a perfect size for something that you don't have. Just get rid of it. So I want to talk a little bit about email. There was an email webinar this morning called Taming the Email Beast, and I had signed up for it, and then I didn't go because I thought, oh, what if I get all kinds of really good pointers and then I have to update my PowerPoint presentation? So I hope there were some good suggestions there, because I do want to go back and watch that. Email can be a beast, and I'll be honest, I am an email hoarder. I keep my email because it's searchable, and it's a very easy way to go back and refresh myself on exactly what was said. And somebody can say, well, you never sent that to me, and I can go back in my email and say, yes, I did, and I can resend it, which I kind of like to do. And then you can also just find out your contact information and things like that. So email is obviously a really, really handy tool, but it can be overwhelming. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about fielding email and managing email. There are some email philosophies out there where you just keep it clean. You just delete absolutely everything if it's not something that you're currently working on. I am not of that ilk, but some people are. They just go really very aggressive in keeping their email clean. I like to use it as a reference. And even though it is probably cluttering up my server and that kind of thing, it's not in my landscape. It's not something I'm seeing that's bothering me and making me feel overwhelmed. So when I go through my email, I field the easy ones right away. If somebody's got a question and it's literally a 2-minute email for me to respond to them, I'm going to respond to them right away. I'm not going to have that hanging over my head. So field the easy ones just straight away. And then the ones that maybe take a little bit more time, I'll open them up fully in my computer, so they're a tab in my browser because I'm using a webmail, or I'll open them up fully and just minimize them if I'm on a PC using Outlook, not on the web. Because that's kind of my to-do list. Any open window on my computer is a to-do list, including email. The only caveat with that is if your computer crashes or anything like that, you've just lost your to-do list. So for maybe overnight, or if it's really something critical, you might want to print it out or make yourself a physical note and keep it on your desk. But you have to keep your desk clean, because if it gets lost in your desk, you're still going to miss it. I like to create temporary folders for my email. I think those are really helpful. For example, when you sign up for a webinar and you need to get that login information super quick because it's like 1 minute till the webinar starts, and where is that email? Where is that email? I have an email folder just for my login information for webinars and online meetings, so that I can find that information super easy, because we've all been trying to log into webinars at the 11th hour and you just can't find that information. So creating temporary folders can be really, really handy. I'm going to touch a little bit more on temporary folders a little bit later, because the great thing about a temporary folder is it's temporary, so you're not hanging on to it forever. Let me give you another example of a temporary folder. Is I have one called Work to Do. So when I am on vacation and I'm fielding some emails, if there's something that I don't have time to do on vacation, it's something that's going to take a little bit more time and energy, I'm going to put that in my Work to Do folder. And then I actually send myself a reminder to check my Work to Do folder, so that everything is right there lined up that I missed when I was on vacation, to make sure that that gets covered. Catching up after vacation, fielding your email is a monster. If you take nothing else away from today, I think I have a really good tip for helping you catch up after your vacation email. I've had as many as, 600, 800 emails after vacation. Create a folder. Put every single email you received while you were on vacation in that folder. And then open that folder and sort it by sender. Because you get so many emails from Baker and Taylor that you don't need, or your daily backup was successful, or all these things. And when you can see 20 messages from Baker and Taylor and you know straight away that you don't need to read any of them, you can delete 20 messages in one fell swoop. And it's one mental blip rather than 20 mental blips. So it's a lot less mentally taxing to go through your email that way. And it just flies by. You know who's sending you email that you need to pay attention to. And you know the email that you get every single day that you just delete, 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 delete. You're still going to get them on vacation, so you might as well delete them all at once. And then we already kind of talked about this a little bit, print or minimize emails so that they stay on your radar. I use, like I said, my desk is my to-do list. So printing an email really shows me that that's really something I need to take care of straight away. And just generally speaking, I kind of joke around at work, but I'm serious. I talk about job skills 101. Show up, meet a deadline, and respond to an email or a phone call. Because, especially if it's a simple question that's only going to take you 2 minutes to respond, don't make that person wait for 4 days on that simple question. So try not to wait too long to go back to email. It's just going to make everything smoother, and people are going to have a much better impression of you and your library if you're more organized and more communicative with them. Okay, let's talk about scheduling and time management. Does anybody have any questions in the meantime?
Oh, earlier Celeste asked, this is back a few topics, what if you share a desk? Or do you want to talk about that later? Like, how do you keep it clean if you have to share?
Boy, that's a good question. Let me come back to that one because I think there is something a little bit later, but let me just jot it down so I don't forget.
But everybody's been sharing their tips and they love your ideas too.
Good. Okay, so scheduling and time management. Again, this is something that you have to do what works for you. This sounds like a total no-brainer, but use a calendar for most everything. Obviously, you use a calendar for your work schedule, or you use a calendar for your meetings and your webinars, but use calendars for things like you have to renew a contract. A lot of contracts, maybe you have to give a 30-day or even a 90-day notification before you decide to cancel that contract. When you sign that contract, put that 90-day window on your calendar so you know that you're giving yourself enough time to make a decision on that contract in case you want to opt out or take a look at another vendor, because if you miss that window, you're going to be stuck, and that's not something that's just typically on your radar because it's so far in advance. I use my calendar also for staff evaluations. When I do evaluations with my staff, there are things that I want to check in with them on, projects they've been working on, and I say, I'm going to check in with you, in March about that, and then it really blows their mind when 7 months later, exactly when you said you were going to check in, you check in. So use a calendar for really pretty much everything, but use the calendar that works for you. I have several staff members who want a printed calendar. They prefer a printed calendar. They don't ever want a Google Calendar, and that's fine. And they're young staff members. It's not like they can't change into the electronic environment or anything like that. I actually thought, well, I'm going to pick my battles here, because for a while I was going to say the library's not going to buy your planners anymore. You guys can all have electronic calendars. Come on, get with the times. And they're like, no, we really don't want to do that. And I said, well, whatever works for you. So we do get people their paper planners now because that's what they prefer. Schedule deadlines early and stick to them. And I do this for just about everything. In fact, this morning I thought my webinar today was at 2 o'clock. Because I had it in my brain that it was at 2 o'clock, because I think of things early. Reports, put them out a week early. Same thing, grant reports, grant applications, because nothing looks good coming in at the 11th hour. And not that, if it's an electronic submission, that, State Board of Accounts isn't on the other end like, oh, just right in under the wire there, Pendleton was. But that way, you're giving yourself plenty of time. So if you need a signature on that report, you're not running around on the very last day. You've given yourself a week. If you need, maybe you're sick, or maybe you have something happen at work that is just all consuming. This way, you're going to make sure that you're not going to miss those deadlines, because missing a deadline just doesn't reflect well on you. So schedule those deadlines and stick to them. Don't think, well, I've got another week for this. Really stick to it. Using reminders, there are lots and lots of options for using reminders. Of course, you can use reminders on your phone. You can put Post-its all over the place. I have a staff member who puts Post-its on her steering wheel so that she sees it first thing in the morning to make sure that. So whatever reminders, again, works for you, use those. And don't be embarrassed to use those. Don't think, oh, I think I'm going to remember that. I mean, I have so much scrap paper in a drawer because I'm constantly writing stuff down. And once I take care of that, then I can throw it away. And I am a huge, huge advocate for working from home. Now, I totally understand that not everybody has that option. But if you do have that option, or if you think you could have that option, I do have some good kind of guidelines that I think are helpful when trying to work from home, just so that you are accountable for the work that you do. So you're teleworking and not telecheating, as some people call it. My personal rules for working from home are no Mondays or Fridays. Monday, it looks like I'm taking a long weekend. Friday, it looks like I'm taking a long weekend. And I know that, like, on Friday, I'm not going to be able to buckle down. I think there is something about the perception of how it looks when you're working from home. So probably no Mondays or Fridays, just because it doesn't look good. And even if you can be productive on those days, you do have to think about appearance sake, especially if you've got a staff. I think you must have something to show for what you do when you work from home, because you can't just say, well, I'm going to catch up on my professional reading. You have to write a report or a grant application or a staff evaluation or something like that. So at the end of the day, you're coming in and saying, this is what I got done today. I get so much done at home because I'm not interrupted. I can concentrate. I tend to do a lot of my writing at home when I'm writing long-range plans or, again, reports or grant applications. And it keeps me organized because we've all had those very hairy days at work that even when you don't have anything on your calendar, something happens and the whole day just kind of, goes down the tubes. So schedule work at home days if you can, because you can really knock off a lot of work if you can stay focused. To stay focused, it's helpful to have functional workspace. Some people would say, don't work in your bedroom, don't work in your living room, don't kind of cross those two areas. I would agree with that. I typically work in like the desk or the table in the kitchen, and I don't ever get confused that I'm at home and at work or anything like that. I mean, I'm very systematic as far as how I set everything up. So create functional workspace for you. Be responsive. Your staff or the people that you work with should know that you are working, and that means you are reachable. That doesn't mean you need to be reachable 24/7 the entire day, because you are working from home so you can get things done and not be interrupted. So let your your coworkers know this is a time frame when I can be reached. This is the best way to reach me. I have a friend who works from home every now and again, and the software they use, if she has not touched her computer in like 30 seconds, her supervisor gets an alert that they suspect she's not really working. So that's kind of ridiculous, but you need to be accountable. They want to know that you're working, so be responsive. That's the way. Make sure you're again fielding email and answering your phone and that kind of thing. And again, I recognize this doesn't work for everybody. If there are kids at home, or a spouse at home, or maybe your home isn't relaxing at all, and that you would rather come into work, you can get more done at work. That's a possibility, obviously. So it does not work for everybody, but if you feel like you just can't get your head above water to actually get anything done, try that working from home, because I'm just a huge advocate for it. So we'll talk a little bit about staying organized and how to stay organized. So when you're organized, and even if you haven't done it 100% just the way it is, once you start to see some progress, just enjoy that progress. Feel really good about what you've done, and just know how it feels to be a little bit more organized. Again, that's going to keep you more motivated. I would say commit at least one full day a year to tidy up. More is even better, I think. So commit. You have to stay committed. It's not just committed when you go in that very first time to do it. You have to stay committed time after time. This we just touched upon very briefly as one of the KonMari method philosophies, I guess, and that's to make sure that everything always has a home so that you can put things away. We feel very cluttered, and our desks feel very cluttered because the stuff on there doesn't have a home. There's no place to put it away, and so it stays there indefinitely, like those landscape items. Make sure that everything always has a home, and that might kind of segue a little bit into if you share a desk, but I'm going to come back to that. I always strive for an empty desk. That may be unrealistic, but I love it when I can go on vacation and there's nothing on my desk. I wipe it down with a Lysol wipe and I go out the door, and that is such a good feeling. So always strive for an empty desk. Just keep on top of stuff, and again, feel that the little things and that low-hanging fruit first. Designating a good way to bring things between work and home. I use my lunchbox. If I grab the backup tape where I have to absolutely remember to bring something home or back to work, I stick it in my lunchbox because I'm going to bring my lunchbox to work, and I'm definitely eating my lunch, so I'm going to see that. I'm not going to miss it. Your car might be a good way to do that. Putting something around the strap of your purse might be a good way to do that. Whatever you need to do to designate a good way to bring things between work and home. I'm a list maker. I love them, and I use them. And that may seem like a no-brainer to make lists and use them, but there is a great sense of satisfaction to cross something off of a list and feel a sense of accomplishment. So even if you make a to-do list for the day and one of them is just to call somebody, when you call that person and you can cross it off that list, that just helps you feel organized. And if you feel more organized, the chances that you're going to just work more efficiently and stay organized, I think, are greater. Don't procrastinate or overcommit. It's easy to just table stuff and wait a little bit longer because maybe you're waiting to hear from somebody else. So make sure you're always following up with the people you need to follow up with, so you're not the one procrastinating and overcommitting. If you have an option to, delegate some work if you need to, time things out the way you can so that you're not overcommitted, because the more overcommitted you are and the closer you're getting to your deadlines because you've procrastinated, the more stressed out you're going to be. And so the whole idea of all of this is to not be stressed out and to feel comfortable and productive in your workspace. And we talked about this. I said I was going to show you one of my desktop shots, using temporary folders and cleaning them out regularly. So this is honestly a desktop. It's not my current desktop, but my desktop has looked like this in the past, and it looks like a nightmare, right? There is a method to my madness here. These are things that maybe it's a contract I signed and I have a hard copy of it, and so I had to scan in an electronic copy of it so I could mail it back to the vendor. I do not need to retain that forever and all eternity. I want the hard copy in the business office. So I keep it on my desktop. It's my version of a temporary folder. And then when I can't stand looking at that desktop anymore, I delete that stuff. Now I still look at it to make sure I don't need it, but chances are almost everything on that desktop can be deleted. And now I don't have it forever and ever and ever. And instead of creating a temporary folder that would show up as an actual folder on this desktop, instead of individual little icons for everything, I want those icons screaming in my face, because that forces the issue. If I tuck everything into a nice, neat little folder and it doesn't take up space on my desktop, I haven't done anything. That's not going to force the issue that I've got to delete this stuff. So by doing this, I'm able to delete those things and not retain them forever and all eternity, and that just keeps things neater for me. I think it's motivating to add personal effects to your office and to your workspace. These are actually some things that I have on my desk. Things have been given to me. That bullet actually was in my desk when I got the job. I sat down at my desk and I opened up my pencil drawer and there was a bullet in it. And I thought, well, I'm going to keep that. And I've had it ever since then. And it's a motivating factor for me. And just little things that people have given me and fun things. The Matryoshka doll is from an actual trip I took to Russia. And I like to have those things. Plus, it gives a little bit of personality when you have people come visit your office. Nice little conversation starters. This kind of goes back to at the beginning saying, to look at some things to motivate you. And although I wouldn't recommend buying a lot of organizational supplies until you have a pretty good handle on how you're going to organize your office, there are some fun little things that you can buy, again, to help motivate you. The fun little stapler, that little grasshopper stapler, I think is so cute. And just some things that you can kind of keep on your desk to make that space yours. The more you make it yours and the more you make it feel like yours, the more you're going to take pride in it, and the less you're probably going to let it go to pot. So just try to keep it neat and try to keep it, special, I hate to say. And this, I'm not perfect in any way, shape, or form. Allow yourself one dirty little secret. This is actually a picture of my pencil drawer. It's clearly a disaster of nerds and hot sauce. I think it's hilarious that my scissors has my name on it. I guess I was not losing a lot of scissors, but they were getting misplaced, possibly, so I was losing them. So we put my name on them. Anyway, so that is my one dirty little secret, that I just kind of keep sort of a messy pencil drawer. Not everything is perfect, and that's okay with me. So those are kind of some tips and things that I have. And let me talk about sharing a desk. I guess I'd kind of like to know more information about that, if we can get more information. Is there, I hate to say like a dividing line, but is there designated space on that desk, or are you sharing in that somebody works in that exact same workspace, and then when you're not there, somebody else is working in that exact same workspace? So we're getting some feedback here. While we're doing that, I was going to say too, something I didn't mention. I kind of have, when I went through the things in my basement from the flood, and I found some things that were up a little higher because we took everything out of the basement. I thought, oh yeah, I kind of forgot I had that. Things that I forgot I had, I also got rid of, even if they weren't damaged, because I said, you know, if I don't know that I have it, I probably don't need it. When I told my mom that, she says, that's not true at all. She says, because if you don't know you have it, chances are you're going to buy another one. I said, well, I don't really mean it like that. I mean, when you're cleaning stuff out and you come across something and you say, oh yeah, I remember that, but you haven't used it in 20 years, you don't need it. So unless it's got a real emotional pull for you, unless it's sparking joy, get rid of it.
Someone else answered the multiples people at the desk. Let me find it. Where'd it go? Oh, Celeste. Celeste says there is no dividing line. There is very limited workspace, so staff have to find areas to work. And someone else also said something. Where is it at? Okay, and Jennifer said we have a rotation of 4 of us, all sharing the same desk depending on who is here.
So it's like a reference desk situation then.
And another one, I share desk 2, I use it 2 to 3 days, and the other person uses the exact same workspace 2 to 3. So it varies what they're doing.
Okay. That would be a little bit tricky. I've surely shared reference desks in the past, and I think your desk that you're sharing should be very functional to the bare minimum. So keep the things that you need for you and then take them with you so that those things aren't getting in anybody else's way. So you should have your scrap paper, and you should have your pencils and your stapler and your keyboard and all that kind of thing. But as far as anybody's personal projects that they're working on, maybe take those with you when you leave the desk. If there's an option for a cart or working off of a cart, that might be something to consider. So you've kind of got personal space there. I know you don't want to feel too terribly like nomadic by, you know, pushing your workspace all over the place, but mobile desks can be very functional. If you've ever seen any mobile desks, and they kind of get you obviously moving around, and they make you more accessible sometimes to your patrons. But I would recommend you and everybody that you work with taking the things with you, and then, you know, look at some of those organizational supplies and think about what would be a good way for me to carry the projects that I'm working on right now out to the desk. Again, I used to work at the Indianapolis Public Library, and we would switch the desks, you know, every couple hours, and we always had our journals we were using for collection development and our pens, but we always took that stuff with us afterwards so that other people's stuff wasn't getting in the way. So if you can come to a meeting of the minds with everybody there, or, you know, if you all get along pretty well, you can say, hey, you get one of those kind of vertical file folders things, and this one is John's, and this one is Jane's, and everybody's got their own kind of designated space, or this drawer is John's and this drawer is Jane's. So I would try to delineate as much as you can.
Okay, a lot of people are also putting some suggestions in and talking about other things. That might be, sharing a desk is just probably going to be a little bit hard, and everybody needs to, I don't know, either maybe share a drawer or not share a drawer, have a separate drawer, or maybe shelves could be added that could be your shelf.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, thank you guys.
All right. Any other questions, thoughts? I'm curious to hear some of your great tips too, because I am not an organizational consultant. I'm a librarian. But the funny thing is when people find out I'm a librarian, just like they find out when all of you are librarians, is you must love to read. And I say, I really don't love to read, which shocks them. Well, then why are you a librarian? It's just because I like to organize things. So I feel like it's something kind of inherent for us.
Okay, well, thanks. And someone else put in there jokingly, how about police tape?
Yeah, it would be very difficult, I think, sharing workspace with somebody that you don't get along with. And I mean, I'm sure that's out there sometimes, but possibly the reason you're not getting along is because you're leaving stuff behind, and it's just getting in their way, and they don't want to see your stuff when they want to bring out their stuff.
Oh, and another person, Janice says, my question again was about patrons sitting down at my desk.
Ah, interesting. Okay, so it's I would hide as much stuff as you possibly can. I mean, and there are other issues there too. I mean, if you're working on, say, patron suggestions, then you've got patrons' names and phone numbers, you know, out and available for people to see. So keep as much stuff hidden as far as that goes. I mean, I know we all kind of work in piles, but even when somebody comes behind your desk, just scoop some of that stuff in a pile and just sort of get it out of your way. drawers, again, are helpful, or just a little, again, if you go to the Container Store, even Office Depot or anything like that, there are all kinds of really cool filing systems that sit on your desk. And just don't have too much stuff going at one time. Work on what you're working on, and the stuff that you're not working on, you should know you're working on it. So there should be some kind of a visual reminder that, oh, I can't forget about that. But when you're working on, your collection development and you're reading that catalog, try to just have that catalog on your desk and everything else kind of stowed away until it's time to start working on those other things. And the more you can keep your to-do list on your computer, the less that's cluttering up your physical space. So again, minimize those emails. Keep your tabs open for things that you're working on so that it's not taking up physical space on your desk.
I think we're still getting lots of other suggestions and questions, and we're probably getting run out of time. I can't remember how many more slides you have.
I don't have any more slides.
Oh, you don't?
My dirty
okay,
little
good.
secret.
Okay, thank you. Jennifer asked, any suggestions for organizing from the start in a new job, new office, someone else's junk? I like your idea of a dated box. Pull out what you need and throw away after date. Any other thoughts?
I think sometimes by looking at, so yeah, you're new, and I totally get that. You don't want to throw away something that you think you need. Be familiar with the retention schedule. The retention schedule is something you can find on the state library page, and what the Indiana Archives Commission recommends, or not recommends, but says that you absolutely have to retain, and make sure that you're not throwing away things like that. But if the folders really look dated, if there are typewritten sheets in there of something and they're not board meeting minutes, chances are you probably don't need them. But yeah, if you're not sure, date them, put them in a box, get them out of your office, and then if you haven't looked at them in a year, just throw them away. And again, what's the worst thing that can happen? Because if you lose something critical and an auditor comes in or something and they want to know where it is, you're new and it's just not there. And there's just nothing you can do about it. So, I would just don't be driven by fear of being afraid of getting rid of something. Be more driven by cleaning up and getting yourself a fresh start in your new job.
And I guess you could scan things too, but that would take a lot of time too,
Yeah.
maybe. So I have a problem with paper clutter at my house. I understand.
The number one paper clutter in your house is your mail. So your mail, just like your email, go through it every day. You grab your mail and you put it on a corner on the countertop, and then tomorrow you do the same thing, and the next day you do the same thing, and then the next thing you know, a bill is late, or, so much of it is just junk mail. Just throw it away straight away. It takes a minute. Yeah, cleaning, some things are parallel between your home and your office. There are certainly some principles that are overarching, but things in your home are so different. It's just a different environment, and it's so much more of a personal, connection. Although clearly I'm personally attached to my scissors. So it has my name on it.
Well, and you like them. They may not work as well as the
That's
other
right.
It's true.
Don't steal my scissors. I have a gummy body part in there too, left over from Halloween. That's a gummy foot.
Again, everybody's sharing so many great things.
Good, I'm glad.
I will, if we don't address your question, I am definitely going to get a copy of this. I'll also share it with Lynn to make sure if we didn't get it addressed, maybe she could put some handy tips in that.
I just really want to get people inspired to do it, because it doesn't, it can be daunting, but even a little bit of progress is very motivating. So like I said, look for that landscape item, get rid of it, and the next time you walk past that space and you don't see it, you're going to be like, cool, progress.
Mm-hmm. I have a lot of landscape things in my house. And I'm going back to that. Yeah.
Yep, lots of landscape items. We all have them. And you just don't see them. You might think, oh, I don't really have any landscape items. Walk around, you'll see them. You got to be looking for them, though.
I also suggested earlier, I said maybe have a swap, maybe have different departments do landscape on another department.
That's a really good idea. Yep, that's a really good idea.
But be nice about it.
Uh-huh. And it's just, the whole library in general, you want to be neat and clean, not just for your patrons, but it's a work environment. Everybody wants to work in a nice work environment, and we all know what makes a nice work environment. It's bright and it's sunny and it's clean and it's got friendly people around it, and it's not bogged down in stuff. and especially stuff you don't need.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else have suggestions out there that work for you in your office? Have you done a major cleanup recently? I know I kind of did a little at my house. It's just piecemeal, but I'm trying.
Every little bit helps.
Yes. Oh, Tylana asked, do you encourage staff to put everything away right away after programs? Like for story times, I'm assuming.
Yes. Yes. Because if they don't, then the next time they're not going to, and all it takes is 4 story times where they haven't put stuff away, and then the place is just a disaster. And then the actual putting away is going to take a lot longer, and that could potentially put them behind. So yes.
And it probably definitely depends on your setup, if you have a place to be able to put it away or not, or...
Yep, everything should have a home, and ideally everything should be in its home all the time unless it's currently being used. And that goes for your office and your home. And if something doesn't have a home, then it sits on your desk, or then it sits on your floor, and then you have it forever and ever and ever because you just don't know what to do with it.
Mm-hmm. Joy says, we have sensed a great calm as we cleared out landscape items for staff and patrons.
Yeah, it helps, even just one of them. Because the other thing about landscape items is they tend to take up a lot of space because you don't have space in your office, or you don't have space in storage, so you just leave them out by the staff mailboxes, or you put them by the back door. The other thing is you put them in a closet and you close the door, and then you keep putting stuff in the closet, and you keep putting stuff in the closet. Like, do you guys have shelving everywhere? And that's a nightmare because it's heavy, and sometimes you need muscle to go through some stuff because it's heavy stuff, and then a lot of times it's like, well, how do I even get rid of this stuff? Oh, can I actually talk real quick about like tox drops and things like that? So sometimes we have landscape items or we're holding out to items because we simply don't know how to get rid of them. I can't throw that can of paint in the trash, and I don't want to pay somebody to get rid of it. What can I do? Most counties have a tox drop, which is a dedicated day of the month or whatever particular time. It is usually free because it's a service provided by the state where you can drop off, toxic things. For example, we did an LED lighting project here, and our contractor was going to charge us $900 to get rid of the old tube lighting. So I went to the tox drop 6 months in a row for Saturday with a little car. I have a little teeny tiny car full of mercury for like 6 months in a row, and got rid of all that stuff at the tox drop and saved the library $900.
Wow.
There is a place in Indianapolis called Green Wave that'll take any of your printers, your monitors, your computers. They'll certify that they've wiped them, destroyed them. They'll give you, tickets and stuff saying, this is what we got rid of, model numbers, all that kind of thing. I know that's in Indianapolis. There may be some close to you as well. So look for tox drops. Recycling places will sometimes take those things too, but oftentimes they charge. Sometimes they may have a free day. Look for shred days. Shred days typically run around tax season, so we'll probably have some shred days coming up here pretty soon in April. If you've got a lot of paperwork to get rid of and all you have is a teeny tiny shredder, look for a shred day. That's a good opportunity for you too.
Right. And if it's a local thing just in one town, a lot of times they'll have you show your like a bill, or just to prove that you live there. So just keep that in mind as well. Okay, everybody still typing. So many great ideas.
I'm so glad.
Okay. Jen Clifton, Indianapolis is holding a recycling program on a weekend at the zoo on 3/16. Cool.
At the zoo?
Yeah.